Hello, welcome to Nonprofit411, the podcast for nonprofit professionals who are passionate about helping and still figuring out the rest. Each episode brings in experts who worked in the sector, fundraisers, directors, and specialists for real conversations and real help you can use in your own work. I'm your host, Sarah Barton, the Generosity Strategist, and I'm joined today by Daryl Hatton, CEO of Connection Point. Welcome, Daryl.
Hey, Sarah, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So we actually just met not too long ago. And I am very aligned with you. I feel very aligned with the way that you see fundraising, the way that you see nonprofit work. And so I'm excited to have this conversation and just kind of learn a little bit more about you and the work that you're doing. And it's going to be fun. So welcome.
Well, for everyone kind of watching, we've had the benefit of having a couple of deep conversations where we get in and start to talk philosophy of what we're doing. And that we ran with like, we got to go now. Like, we've got other things to do. So it was kind of funny to have that level of alignment show up so fast. And I really appreciate you for that.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And, that's what I love about the nonprofit sector. I love the intersections that you find and the breadth of experience. So before we get too far into it, you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. So as you said, I'm CEO of Connection Point. Connection Point is the name of our company and the name of what we call our collaborative commerce platform. Collaborative commerce is about helping causes and corporations work with consumers to fund impact projects. So we take that to market under multiple brands. One of them is Fundraiser, Fundrazr, which is or ZR if you're Canadian. It's for personal and professional charity. So it's like GoFundMe Pro. But the key thing that we've done with that is really help focus on the social fundraising aspects of it. We're not trying to be a CRM for everyone. We're trying to really focus on how do you use social fundraising to build a community of advocates and have them help you find new donors. So it's a slightly different approach to the whole thing. And to give everyone an idea of scale, we've helped raise about $400 million for about 200,000 projects so far.
Yeah. So that was the first introduction to you was related to Fundraiser. And I have this experience. It was probably 2005, maybe. Glennon Doyle, who is an author and an advocate, she did a fundraiser through like a crowdsourcing mechanism, and you weren't allowed to donate more than $5. And in the first day, they raised $1 million. Yes. So it was huge, right? And so I am fascinated by the idea of using crowdsourced fundraising, for nonprofit work, because I've seen it work. I mean, and that was 20 years ago, before we were as connected as we are now. And we have so many opportunities to be connected. And so I'm so excited to just listen to you and find out, kind of some of the things that you've learned, some of the trials and errors that have come along, in the process, what doesn't work, what does work, and just have a great conversation about this. So how'd you get into fundraising? One of the
interesting kind of pieces of that is that in the beginning of where we got started, I got started because I was looking at the way people were starting to use Facebook. And specifically, I got started because I was trying to get my son's lacrosse team. I was coaching, trying to get them to attend practice. And I was emailing them and nothing was happening. So I posted a group on Facebook because I noticed they were all on Facebook. And everybody showed up for practice. And I kind of went, I wonder if I can get them to pay for their fees for playing like this. And so the first version of Fundraiser was created to help do the fee collection for my lacrosse team. And we thought we'd do some donation processing on the side because, we need to raise money for the team. And passing the bucket around in the stands was just getting to be tedious. And the fee collection part kind of fell flat, but the donation stuff took off. And so the unintended side effect of trying to do something But in those early days of what we were doing, Facebook was still a new thing and it still had a positive vibe. People were quite happy to be doing it and they were experimenting with it. It was so early that people said, you're using that thing where, like the kids use it for doing hot or not? Like you're going to build a business on that? And the answer was yes, because it's going to change the way we communicate. So fast forward a little bit, early campaigns were really, really easy to get to go because it was new and exciting. And the fraud experience hadn't happened to some people yet. So people were more willing to test it and try it. And, now it's a lot harder to do. We don't trust it as much. Everyone's engagement on social media in general is down because of some of the toxicity that's involved there. But there's still some really good things that are happening. And so our question is, how can we make it work in a positive way, despite all the headwinds that are in that social fundraising market?
Yeah. One of the things I love about having a platform like that is that, you can share it, but you can also update within it. Because I always tell my nonprofits that I work with, you can put stuff on social media and you actually have no idea who sees it, right? It's so driven by individual algorithms now that you can't be sure that what you put out there is actually being seen by the people that want to see it even, right?
Yeah, we subscribe to the stuff we want, and then we're filled with everything that the platform is trying to sell us. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things that we think is really important in this is that to rise above the noise on social media really is about getting your existing donors and your community of supporters to be advocates for you. So when they will share, that's different when you share.
Yeah.
Because now it's more of a personal recommendation. And the algorithm still has to have some of that stuff, or else everyone just gives up on it. Yeah. So it will prioritize some of the personal things that your group does. But one of our kind of, I guess, our approaches to the whole thing is to say it should be an 80-20 rule about what you share. 80% of the time, you should be talking about the results that you're generating. And sometimes in fundraising world, we're supposed to ask every time. We're going, no, don't do that. It's the opposite. 80% of the time, share what's going on. 20% of the time, you might ask for something. But you do an 80-20 on that 20 as well. So we're really breaking it way down. 80% of the time when you're asking, ask for advocacy. Ask for people to share and talk about it. And 20% of that time, so we're getting a really small amount here, you might ask for a contribution. And everybody goes, well, I'll never get anything. And it's actually not true. The opposite is kind of true. The more you're sharing that impact, the more the donation becomes a side effect of communicating the results you're creating. It takes some faith to believe in that, some trust that that's actually going to happen. But that's what we're seeing really work.
Yeah. I use a very similar strategy in my work. It probably ends up being 75-25 because I do 12 weeks and then every 4 weeks is a smaller increment in that. And I love it. I love when people come back to me and they're like, oh my gosh, it happened, right? It really happened. But you have to have that consistency to be able to see that it's even happening. And a lot of times organizations struggle with that consistency because, maybe it's just one of them or two people working within the organization. And I think this piece of advocacy is so key. I talk to people about using their CRM or other platforms as a way to share the work too, right? Too often we have board members who might have expertise in, let's say, marketing, or they're great at social media. It's one of the things they said they could offer when they came onto our board, and we don't have that avenue for them to be able to utilize ours and be another voice in our ecosystem. And so I think that that's an important piece. And I think Fundraiser allows you to do that, right?
Very much. And that, that's a really important thing. A lot of folks will come to us and say, I don't know how to get started in this social stuff. We don't have a crowd. Like, how am I going to do crowdfunding? I don't have a crowd. And so there's 3 techniques to getting a crowd. You build a crowd, which is where you're collecting email addresses and you're doing all the work in person. You're talking to somebody. You're starting to assemble your mailing list, and you end up having a crowd that you can communicate by email. You can buy a crowd. You can Google ads, or you can, get on and try and attract people to your cause through ads. Tough thing, pretty expensive for most people. Doesn't necessarily really work well for some certain types of causes. Or you can borrow a crowd. Now, the cool thing about a crowd is I can lend you my crowd and I'm not giving it away. I'm just sharing it with you. And so your board members have a crowd around them. They have friends. They might use LinkedIn. They might be willing to share it by email directly or messenger it to someone or things like that. You've got volunteers that are going to do that. You've got your donors. If you think about every donor, they are going to have somewhere between a couple of hundred and maybe a couple of thousand, younger donor, a couple thousand friends in social media. If you get them to share something out, even if it only gets seen by 5% of those, 5% of 1,000 is still 50 people that you reached. So it's a way to get out to a crowd that you couldn't reach in any other way, cost effectively. And so we talk about how do you borrow a crowd borrow it from your board, borrow it from your volunteers. And here's one that a lot of people don't think about. Borrow it from your corporate sponsors.
Yes, I was going to say it. It's like sitting right here.
So tell me about that. Tell me about how you would see that.
Well, so you want to find a corporate partner who's aligned with what you're doing, and then they have a crowd that's already pre-segmented, right? They've already identified people who are interested in what you're doing. Let's say it is animal, something related with animals. So if I'm doing maybe animal rescue, what are some corporations that I could reach out to and even talk about this as our initial partnership? Like, it's an easy, low-hanging partnership for a corporation. And I think PetSmart, any of your pet stores, your other rescue places have crowds that they, that are interested in that. Maybe you have a specific niche and, they're interested in expanding their reach. And so both your names go on it. And all of a sudden now it adds clout and it adds legitimacy to what you're doing also.
It's an endorsement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that comes of that, you can ask those corporate partners to do things like share it to their supply chain partners. We've got groups that are one of the companies does a cause for girls in East Africa. They do education work. That company talks to all their supply chain partners. They make shampoo and cosmetic products. They talk to all their suppliers and get their suppliers involved in supporting the work that their charitable partner is doing, because it helps the brand of the entire ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's that part of it there. And one of the things that a lot of corporate partners will say is, look, I'd love to help you more. Tell me how I can help you without writing you a bigger check. Because they've got a marketing budget. That's the amount that or philanthropic budget. That's all they can do. This type of promotion is something they can do for free. And companies are actually kind of pretty good at marketing. If you think about it, that's what they do all day long. So their ability to get the message out can be even better than your cause.
Yeah. I'll tell you another one that works really well for rural communities that I have utilized in my work over the years are your local media stations. Media stations, that's what they're in the business for. And for many media stations, they have an opportunity for partnerships with nonprofits. And so I know in our local region, the media stations have, if you find a business partner and that business partner uses their media, they can give you minutes. Like they just give you minutes for your media. And sometimes it's not the same minutes that are in their bucket. So, it's just beneficial. It's a way for us to create more partnerships between nonprofits and businesses. That's why the media stations do it. But I've done it in radio. I've done it in television. And neither of those medias are dead. They're still really well utilized. And they know how to use some of the extended medias, like your iHeartRadio or your streaming platforms. They already have that infrastructure in place. And so you can get a big bang for your buck that way.
Well, and one of the things, your local community newspaper wants, like I've been told by the publisher of one that owns like 50 of the community newspapers around here, Matt said, look, we want good content that shows what's going on in the community. So when you bring us a story about the impact that this cause is doing in the local community, we want to cover it. Now, we don't have a lot of room to cover it. It costs us something to cover it. But he said, we're hungry for stories of that because it's a positive thing that people want to know about. It feels connected to the community, and the paper delivering it looks good to them. To them, they feel really good about being able to deliver that info. So, don't hold back on talking with your local community papers about, hey, is there a way we can give you, like, don't say, can you help me? Because they'll think you're asking for money. Say, what kind of stories can we bring you that you would love to tell your community about? And get some guidance from them about the kind of structure that they want. Sometimes your community writer, you can go right to the writer or the editor for that section and say, how can I help you get content for your stories? And they're going, oh, please, thank you. I have to come up with this stuff every week and I'm really, really over it. So there's that. The other thing is,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to just say, just along that lines, I've worked for many nonprofits. I've had stuff be on the front page because there wasn't a lot of news that day. The other thing that you can do if you're a nonprofit approaching media and you're providing them stories is if you tell them that it's not time sensitive, like it's not a time sensitive thing, they'll save it for a day when they really need something. And so you'll get a much bigger splash if you aren't fussy about when it goes out. So if you think about those stories that are kind of timeless, it's just a nice little tip to be able to.
And we've spent some time on it, but I just want to add one more thing before we're done. A lot of people say Giving Tuesday, oh, it's getting complicated. It's getting tired. It's getting, is this really going to work anymore? And how do we, especially for small causes, how do we stand out on Giving Tuesday? One of the things you can say to your corporate partners is say, Giving Tuesday is coming up. You support us all year long. Please, in your thing, today is Giving Tuesday. How about supporting the cause we care about, which is so-and-so? And then, if you're looking for a place to give today, give to the cause we support. Here's the link. And they can get you visibility that goes way beyond, because their initial channels can get you like 100 times, 1,000 times the distribution you might get. And it gets out into the community. And everybody goes, it's that endorsement thing. Hey, somebody's saying that this is a safe place to give. If somebody's trying to, I need to check the box, it's Giving Tuesday, I need to give something. If you just made it easy for them because their brand that they like said, go here, they'll go there.
Yeah. The ease. So the ease of giving is such a huge thing, that we sometimes put time and effort into thinking about, but sometimes we don't think about, like, how important it is to make it easy. And I always tell people, you want to make it so easy that whenever they're inspired, it's easy to give, because you can't predict when they're going to be inspired. Like it can be the most, you've probably experienced this. And if you have a great story that comes to mind, but the most random update that produces a large gift, it can be shocking. You'll be like, what? Why? And so it just was that they were sitting on it, and that thing just hit at the right time, and all of a sudden they were inspired to give.
It can even be smaller gifts. And this is the funny thing is, we preach the idea that you should do updates on your campaigns pretty regularly, like tell people the results. And we had one cause, which was called Harvest Project here in North Vancouver. They're kind of a hand up, not a handout type charity. They do counseling for people to get them out of poverty. And they were publishing their campaign, and I'm going, Philippe, you got to go do an update. He's going, well, it just seems so much work. It's like a blog post, dude. You go in, you type out a small thing about what's going on. It automatically delivers out to the donors that have come through this project. One of the things we do is we try and get people to break things up into smaller projects, because a donor feels like they're making a bigger impact when the goal is smaller. So they said, just post on that one the update of some of the news that had happened. And he posted it, and he came back the next day and he said, we got $1,000 or $2,000 worth of donations from donors we've never even heard of before. It is like, yeah, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't been lying to you the whole time. We're really trying to get you to do good things for you. And, that kind of epiphany that, wait, if I say the good news, people will automatically share that to other people. Or, like it's not perfect. Some people will share a little bit of it. But if you reach a new donor from that and they go, my friend donated here, I'll donate too. New donor, now you got somebody you can continue to communicate with. Hopefully they become an advocate and they help you bring you somebody new.
Yeah. Yeah. And raising that awareness, this is really interesting because I do a lot of strategic fundraising, strategic planning with nonprofits. And so we look at 9 different areas of generosity and do they have the engines built kind of underneath it? And I found very consistently that organizations don't really think about the donor journey. Like what happens? How are we getting people to learn about us? And then what do we do once they learn about us? How do we kind of move them along in the process? I think that one of the nice things about doing it by project is it naturally moves a person further and further into the work. And then you can have the success story, the finished project at the end. And that's a nice move to be able to kind of attract people into the organization and, new people who you might not have seen or met in the past, and a way to process them into something deeper with your organization. And I
very much.
Yeah.
And
I say process. I know they're people, but we're moving them along.
We're moving them through a process to try and help them become part of our movement. Like it's not just they're not a donor. They're not there for a cashectomy or an ATM that we can draw on all the time. They're there because we want their energy to support us. Some of that energy will be financial. Some of it will be advocacy. Some of it might be volunteerism. So there's different ways that they can do it. But it really is the nice thing about having small projects. We say sometimes break it up into micro projects, really tiny projects, is you get credibility every time you finish something. A lot of funding on your website, your donor page is your long tail, infinite. We're here forever. We're always going to need money. Please give us money. When you're doing a project, you can say, we got it done. Now, by the way, we have another project which you'd be interested in, but you've built the credibility, you delivered a result. And that, the communication about that is one of the best things you can do for donor retention. We lose so many people along the way every year. We're having to fight to replace them all the time. And a lot of that's because we fall into what they call the forgettable zone in marketing. If you're only talking to them once every year or once every 6 months, they've forgotten who you are.
Yeah.
And so if we can remind them on a regular basis that we're doing good work with their money, they're more likely to stick around and give another gift. And that retention factor is, I think, really underrated, underfunded kind of thing in the work that a lot of groups do. We focus on trying to go to get another big new donor, as opposed to cultivating and keeping the ones we've got, where, by the way, they might all of a sudden become a bigger donor because they now go, I trust you. You keep delivering results, I'll give you more.
Yeah, I want to share with you just a piece of information I learned recently. And then I want the retention stuff. I worked in higher education, and every student represents a dollar amount in our budget, right? And so when we were looking at retention, every loss of a student represented additional funds that had to be identified elsewhere, And so I think in higher education, I learned that so well because it's very fluid. And I worked with a guy, I was actually thinking about him. I was thinking about doing a post about how good he was on retention. He could tell me down within usually 3 students what our number would be when I was registrar. And I mean, he was good. He if he didn't know, guess what he did? He just went to them and he's like, okay, where are you? Do you think you're coming back? Usually the 3 that he was unsure of, it was completely based on some financial need, financial aid need or something like that. But he knew, and that is so helpful. If we considered that more when we're looking at our fundraising, and when we look at our list of donors and supporters and we think, oh, okay, if Daryl's not coming back this year, Well, he gave $1,000 last year. That's $1,000 that we need to find someplace else or replace with new donors. Like, do we have a strategy for that? Do we have a plan for that? So,
yeah, very much. And, this is why we talk about the difference between what we're doing, which is trying to work on that group of maintaining those digital donors. It's really interesting that with the new donors that are coming on, where their advocacy is sometimes bigger than their budget that they can support you, they may be only able to give you $20. But if they get out there and they kind of stump for you all the time because you're telling them that their $20 was worth it, they might inspire a few $1,000s worth of giving. Some of the best advocates we've seen could only afford $20 and they brought in 10,000.
Yeah.
You should be inviting them to your gala because these are the people that care about you so much. They give to the amount that they can afford and then they still give through their energy. We tend to focus on wealth as opposed to activism and activity.
Yeah.
And
that actually brings me to the piece of data that I told you about that I was going to give you.
Yeah.
It was a meta research project. I learned about it from Daniel Priestley. And they looked at, so what they did was they would put stuff in front of people. And then at the end of the month, they would measure like, which one of these do you remember, right? And they found out that you need to be seen at least 11 times in 90 days in order to be remembered. Okay. So a lot of times, nonprofit strategies for communicating out might be once a month or, maybe twice a month. So if you're only communicating out twice a month, that means there's 9 other times someone is going to have to see your name in a month to remember you.
Right.
It's why I really advocate for, every nonprofit should be emailing out. In a year, it should be at least 65 emails. That's once a week plus a couple of extra,
Plus
right?
a couple of specials, yeah.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to like what you're talking about, we can do this at least weekly. At least weekly, we can say, hey, this is what happened. I know I used to have to do a report. I worked remotely, had to do a report every week about what I did. Guess what? Every week I had stuff that I'd done.
Yeah, amazing. Eh?
I know. So, yeah.
And this is where we think a platform like Fundraiser can really help, because the emailing out to everybody, when we have to write an email, we go and get formal. We're trying to figure out who we're going to do, dear so-and-so, trying to figure it out. The nice thing about the social fundraising side is you make a blog post kind of thing. Hey, we're here. It can be more casual. It can be more conversational. And as a result, the communications can feel way more friendly. And if you get one of those every week and the focus of it is telling you the good work that was done with your money, you're going to open it. You're going to look at it. And so that memorable zone, like the forgettable zone, is a really big problem for nonprofits, especially when we're told that we don't have the resources to go communicate all the time. I don't have the time for that. You don't have the time for not that, because that's why you've got a revenue problem that's causing all the rest of the problems, is we're focusing on, kind of some of the wrong parts of the solution.
Yeah. I mean, really, and think about it. It takes 5 minutes to write an update. Okay, maybe it takes 20. 20 minutes out of your entire week. You have 40 hours. You're saying 20 minutes a week you're going to spend on a communication out. That investment, that singular investment of 20 minutes a week is going to pay off in dividends over and over and over.
And over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because one of the things about having the updates on the campaign is that there's an activity feed with the project. And so those updates are now a history. You get a new donor who comes to it and they can browse through the things that have happened already. And you might think that's not a big deal. They're going, these people deliver on what they promised. Because if it's all focused about that, the confidence level grows up and up and up, because they can browse the feed if they want. They don't have to. We're not forcing them to read every update that was out there. But if you sharing a little photo or something like that, a snapped on your phone, it doesn't have to be. It shouldn't be polished.
Yes. I
It
agree.
shouldn't be followers. Be human, be real, be casual, be your friend. Share it with a friend. That's all you're doing. And that type of content engages so much better than other types. And, we'll have to have a whole discussion about AI content and the part where people will feel abused if you're overdoing it.
Yeah. 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 I say it's great to shape your own words, not necessarily to create any words for you. So, and sometimes I'm guilty too, but but we got to have that balance where we're like consistently going back and trying to fix it, fix it,
Well,
fix
I
it,
try
fix
and
it.
ask it, did I make sense? I
Yeah.
did this.
Me too.
And yeah, what was the thing that you took out of what I said? Because there's that place of, I want my voice to come through and I don't want it to be blanded out, but I also want to know that I'm communicating effectively.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes I might ramble a little, but don't ramble.
Yep. I know.
Or pontificate.
We're already at 30 minutes for this conversation. So like I can't ever, these go so fast. They are not long enough. But I don't quite have time in me yet to do the long form 3-hour conversations like Joe Rogan,
Yeah. And if I don't have the time to listen to them, so that, I get it, but we can always talk again. And I think next time there's some other topics that we'll probably tackle along the way, because we're both on the journey of learning more about this as we go. And we've only been doing it, what is it, 16 years now? I mean, sometime soon we're going to get good at it. Yeah,
that's right. So, well, thanks for joining us, Daryl. You want to let our listeners know where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. So look for Fundraiser, fundrazr.com is where you can learn about the platform. ConnectionPoint.com, and you can learn more about the company. And if you look for me on LinkedIn, Daryl Hatton, it's just my name. DM me if you've got some questions, or reach out and connect, and happy to help out. We do a fair bit of advocacy work and kind of free consulting about what crowdfunding strategy is all about, because when we make our community stronger like this, we eventually benefit. We know that. So how can we help out? Yeah, the sum is greater than the whole. So, or the sum is greater than the part. So yeah, that's perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you all for listening. That's it for today's episode of Nonprofit 411. Thank you, Daryl, for being here and sharing what you've worked and what you're working on. I refer people to you often, so I hope that we can continue to have tons of conversations. For my listeners, if this conversation was useful, do me a favor, subscribe wherever you're listening right now, so the next episode shows up automatically in your feed. And if you want more between episodes, come find me on LinkedIn. I'm always there. I'm Sarah Barton, and I post there most days about building fundraising that lasts. I'll see you soon.